Hello everyone, I'm Daniel Rubenstein. It's July 16th, 2024, day 284 of the October 7th war, and this is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. We are live on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Please follow us, tell your friends to follow us on all the platforms. You can submit questions in the chat, and I'll get to some of them at the end. Yesterday, our daily briefing focused on what the IDF found in the headquarters of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, or UNRWA, in Gaza City. The IDF found drones, war rooms used for surveillance operations, rockets, machine guns, mortars, bombs, and grenades. We noted in our briefing yesterday that the head of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, said nothing about how Hamas took over UNRWA's headquarters in Gaza and turned it into a military base. It turns out that a few minutes before we went live yesterday, Lazzarini did say something. He published a tweet. I printed it out. It said, "Shocking. UNRWA headquarters in Gaza turned into a battlefield and now flattened. Another episode in the blatant disregard of international humanitarian law. United Nations facilities must be protected at all times. They must never be used for military or fighting purposes. Every war has rules. Gaza is no exception." So there you have it. We can confirm Philippe Lazzarini is a coward. He didn't say that Hamas turned UNRWA headquarters into a military base. And he didn't even use the word Hamas in his tweet. He wrote in passive voice because his job is to hide the truth. This is the story that UNRWA head Philippe Lazzarini doesn't want you to know. On October 12th, 5 days after the October 7th massacre, UNRWA evacuated its headquarters in Gaza City. They locked the gate and left. That should have been the end of the story. But the Israeli military got a tip. Hamas had a military base in a tunnel under UNRWA's headquarters. The IDF uncovered the tunnel. It was more than 2,000 feet long. The tunnel was a Hamas command center, intelligence base, and server farm. The electricity for the computers underground came from UNRWA's headquarters above ground. After the IDF left UNRWA's headquarters, Hamas came back and turned it into a military base. Again, the IDF got a tip, raided the complex, and discovered tons of weapons, including drones. Hamas is guilty of militarizing UN facilities, and everyone knows it, including UNRWA's leadership, which is begging donors for more money. International funding to UNRWA is a direct subsidy to the Hamas army of terror. There's no excuse at this point for not knowing how UNRWA is an integral part of Hamas's military machine. UNRWA is a Hamas front. Philippe Lazzarini is playing dumb. The rest of us should play smart. Dismantle UNRWA, support more responsible aid organizations, and ensure that Hamas can no longer hide behind the UN flag. Everyone needs to understand how UNRWA operates. It looks like a UN organization. Its colors are the UN colors. But UNRWA, in practice, is a Palestinian organization. Its employees are local Palestinians. But a Palestinian is never the head of UNRWA. Did you ever wonder why that is? The head of UNRWA is always a Western white savior like Philippe Lazzarini. Lazzarini has one job: get Western donors to keep giving to UNRWA. That's why he is there. His job is to play dumb about what really happens in Gaza, and he's great at that. Lazzarini is raising money for UNRWA at the same time that the IDF is revealing that Hamas turned UNRWA's headquarters into a military base. He's raising money for UNRWA when it's clear that UNRWA is beyond repair and should be shut down. He's raising money for UNRWA when UNRWA teaches Palestinians that their conflict with Israel should continue until there is no Israel. Do you know who was once an UNRWA teacher? Ismail Haniyeh. The head of Hamas was once an UNRWA teacher. There's no contradiction between being an UNRWA employee and a Hamas terrorist. There are Hamas terrorists on the UNRWA payroll, including some who participated in the October 7th massacre. UNRWA is a front for Hamas, and every day that it continues to operate is a day that pushes peace further and further away. Let's take some questions from our live audience on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. If you're watching us on one, please follow us on all the others. Thank you, Adam, for this question. The short answer is yes. I think the answer is yes. We have made the case over the past 9 months of UNRWA's role in protecting Hamas, UNRWA's role in being a base for Hamas operations, UNRWA's role in covering up for Hamas. So the connection is clear, UNRWA, Hamas. And I think the short answer is yes, and we should make the case. Next question.
Our next question comes from Ellen on Instagram Live. What is Israel doing to prevent an attack from Hamas in Judea and Samaria like what happened on October 7th?
Thank you, Ellen, for watching on Instagram Live and submitting the question. Israel has to be vigilant on every border, and that's exactly what it's doing. We have emphasized before that Israel is fighting a 7-front war. This is not just the Gaza war. We're talking with fronts in Gaza, in Lebanon, the West Bank, Syria, militias in Iraq, Iran itself, Yemen. We're fighting a multi-front war, and Hamas and its sympathizers are not just in Gaza. Hamas would like to establish itself much more strongly in the West Bank. Fortunately, the Israeli military is there. It is present in the West Bank. But we are constantly reading headlines about attempted attacks in the West Bank, and it is only due to vigilance and maybe a little bit of luck that the situation has not gotten worse than it is, but we should very much stay on guard. Next question, please, from those watching Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn Live. We're happy to hear from you.
Hi, our next question is coming also from Instagram Live. Assuming that Hamas has fled, what do we think that will happen with regard to food and other resources toward the Gazans in the Gaza Strip?
Yes, I'm seeing a lot of different headlines about what Israel's policy is about humanitarian aid that enters the Gaza Strip. So the first thing to say is a very clear point. There are no restrictions on the amount of humanitarian aid that can enter Gaza. Israel's policy is that all humanitarian aid can enter Gaza. Food, water, medicine, medical equipment. It's going in, and it's going in big numbers. And it's been going in from 3 dimensions, 4 directions, okay? There's crossings in northern Gaza called the Erez crossing. There's been aid going on the eastern side. Down further south is the Kerem Shalom crossing, where most of the aid trucks are going in. There's also a border crossing between Egypt and Gaza, which Egypt used to have open but has closed. We should be asking questions of Egypt. Why did Egypt close its crossing? Why has it removed its cooperation with Israeli inspections for aid that goes into Gaza? There's also the U.S. pier on the west of Gaza on the Mediterranean Sea where aid is coming in. It's coming in a bit slowly from the pier. The U.S. has declared that it is going to shut down this operation. It's ultimately not necessary with the amount of food that is going in through the land crossings. There have also been airdrops. But that's just step 1. The aid that is going in is step 1. Once the aid is inside Gaza, it is up to the United Nations and other NGOs to distribute that aid. And what we can see very clearly, we can literally see it from standing inside Israel, looking into Gaza, the aid is piling up on the Gaza side of the Kerem Shalom crossing. So Israel is making sure that aid goes in. It is piling up on the other side. There's about 1,200 aid trucks, 1,200 trucks worth of aid sitting inside Gaza waiting for it to be picked up so that the UN can distribute it. So where are the NGOs that are supposed to distribute this? Where is the UN? Is it UNRWA that's responsible? We've already spoken a lot about the problems of UNRWA. So I would hope that the UN and other aid organizations and NGOs in Gaza can be much clearer about the problem, that it is not Israel's policy of not allowing aid to go in. It is their inability to distribute it once it's inside Gaza. And if the problem is Hamas and people looting the aid, then these aid organizations need to say so loud and clear so everyone can understand the problem. We've also spoken about cigarettes in Gaza, how the most valuable thing in Gaza is cigarettes. Their individual cigarettes are selling for $25 or more inside Gaza. So as a result of the high price of cigarettes, there is a black market of cigarettes. People are attempting to smuggle cigarettes inside food aid. So while Israel is inspecting for weapons and things that Hamas can use, it is not able to check every single little individual package, and it could be that cigarettes are getting in. And what we've seen on the Gaza side is that people inside Gaza are attacking aid trucks and leaving the food in the truck on the ground because people are opening up the food and looking for cigarettes. So that's a sign of the situation in Gaza. We also have to remember the big picture. The reason that the humanitarian situation is difficult in Gaza is because Hamas refuses to end the war that it started on October 7th, lay down its arms, and release the hostages that it is holding for 9 months. I can assure you that if Hamas would end the war, the humanitarian situation in Gaza would accelerate, improve dramatically, as would the ability of UN aid agencies to actually drive around and deliver aid. Thank you for that question.
Our next question comes from Aisha on Instagram Live. Can you help me understand why are no other Arab countries taking in refugees from Gaza?
Yes, thank you, Aisha, on Instagram Live. Why are no Arab countries taking in refugees from Gaza? I think the general attitude, first of all, is that the problem of Gaza is not their problem. It's Israel's problem. That's number one. Egypt does not want to be seen as cooperating with Israel. That's a big part of the picture. There are political needs in every single country that they not be seen as cooperating with Israel and that they be seen as standing with Palestinians. And the Palestinians themselves are trying to stay where they are. So that's the main reason. There's only two places that people in Gaza can exit. One is in Israel, which of course is quite unrealistic because the government of Gaza declared war on Israel on October 7th with the participation of many people in Gaza. So the idea that Israel would be taking in people from Gaza in the middle of a war is not realistic. So what Israel has tried to do is declare safer zones, humanitarian zones inside Gaza, so that people can move further away from where fighting is taking place. And we have seen that Hamas has tried to take advantage of Israel's desire to help people escape the war zones. But the big question must be directed at Egypt, which also shares a border with Gaza. Egypt's policy is that basically nobody can cross. It takes a lot of money to pay the Egyptian border control to allow people to go into Egypt. So Egypt does not want Hamas fighters also to escape Gaza and end up in Egypt and cause instability in Egypt. So the big picture is that people are telling Israel that Gaza is your problem.
Our last question for today comes from Lynn on Instagram Live. What can people in the Jewish diaspora and other allies around the world do in order to help spread the truth?
Yes, this is the big question. What can we do? There's a lot of answers for that. I've mentioned before in this forum. First of all, everyone needs to make themselves smarter. You should be reading more. So if you'd like a reading list, you can direct message me on Instagram where you're watching now. My username on Instagram is Ruby Guides Israel, R-U-B-Y Guides Israel. So that's step number one, is to become as informed as possible yourself. That means reading books and also reading as much news as possible. We have many English news sites in Israel, the Times of Israel, Jerusalem Post, Haaretz, Ynet. It's possible to stay informed about what's going on in Israel in English. You can also tell people about us, the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. We're on all the platforms, as I've mentioned. And whatever community you're a part of, stand up, set an example. If you're unafraid to stand up for Israel, to stand up for the Jewish people, to be proud of who you are already taking a step in the right direction, and you're able to make a much bigger difference than you think is possible. I remember the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He was asked this question, and he gave the simple answer of be a good Jew. You don't have to be so complicated. Be proud of who you are, stand up for who you are, set an example for others around you, and the climate of fear will lower if we all stand together and don't let our adversaries see that we are disturbed by their hatred. That's all we have time for. This was the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. I'm Daniel Rubenstein. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to connecting with whoever messages me on social media. Have a wonderful day.